Welcome back to the Pride Detroit POD cast. We got through a lot of optimism. We got through a lot of Kool-Aid. I loved it. I loved all of it. Here's where we make you hate us. Here's where we tell you why the Lions are going to suck, and they're going to suck badly. Here's where we let out all our terrors, our fears, our demons, and just melt. And I feel like I have to go to the fearless leader, who that name is a lie for him. He has many, many fears. He's got the shirt "No Fears," and then you show him the Detroit Lions. He's like, "I've got a lot of fears, actually."
I do. And I mean, it's got to start in the secondary this year. It's a passing league, and the Lions' defense, specifically their secondary, I'm afraid of it. There's a lot to figure out there, and I'm just talking about the starters, right? Like Jeff Okudah, what is he going to look like? Amani Oruwariye, can he be a legit number one? Can he, continue kind of the momentum towards the last part of the season and build towards being someone that could be a legit like high end starter, whether it's high end number 2 or high end number 1? I don't know. And then at safety, I think you can feel pretty safe about Tracy Walker, feel pretty good about Tracy Walker, but Deshaun Elliott is a guy who hasn't been able to do it for a full year. And so right off the bat, I have big question marks out of 3 of the 4 starters in the secondary. And that's not even including nickel, because that is also a question, right? Like, I don't even know where the Lions are going to land there. And so I just don't know how that all is going to play out. There hasn't been enough good play by that group for me to feel confident about it. And I know the pass rush can maybe hide some of that stuff, but what they can't do is hide it forever. And at some point, this secondary is going to get challenged. At some point, the Lions are going to be in a situation like they were in last year several times, where they just need one more stop, and the opposing team is going to be passing the ball all the time. And I just don't know if the Lions can get that stop right now with the guys. And I'm hopeful for some of them, but for a lot of them, they have a lot of questions to answer. And when you have that many questions to answer, you're not going to get all yeses. You're not going to get all positive answers. Some of those guys aren't going to live up to your hopes. And that, to me, is going to be the biggest downfall of this team.
I think to that point, Jeremy, because there is that cause for concern with the with the secondary, because it's just been a position that's been in flux. I think a lot of people feel this way ever since Darius Slay was shipped off. You know what I mean? Like, seemed like Darius left and Quandre left, and then Glover Quinn. I mean, just the remnants of those teams of 2014 and 2015 and 2016, like, just said shipped off, and they'd gone to other places, and in came youth, but like that's where the Lions still are. You know what I mean? Like
the hoary veteran of this team is Alex Anzalone.
Yeah, at the linebacker, but like even just like in the secondary, in the secondary, like who is that guy? Like the guy is Tracy Walker, right, Jeremy?
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
he's the quote unquote de facto leader, but I mean, it's just I think we talked about this when we were breaking down the 53, but like there's question marks in the areas of depth, and then there's question marks about like, is Amani Oruwariye, like, is he a top 32 cornerback? Can he play up to that? Is Jeff Okudah, what can we even expect of Jeff Okudah, right? Like, so I think because there is so much of that uncertainty, I guess, to borrow some Dan Campbell, like, out into the blackness of the sea of unknowns is the Lions secondary. So I'm right there with you.
And the depth isn't there either, right? Like,
yeah, right.
We're talking about who's even the backup outside cornerbacks right now? It's Will Harris and Bobby Price.
Yeah.
Like, if either of those guys has to play, how can you feel confident about that at all?
Yeah. Not happy about it. Not. I mean, we thought AJ Park would make the team, and he's an undrafted free agent from not long ago. So he doesn't, but at some point I expect to see him play. Maybe, I don't know. I don't think Jared Goff is going to be that guy. I just don't. I hate to dog him. I hope he has improved. I've seen his floor, and I am a big believer of I don't care if you don't have that high of a ceiling, but if your floor is low, I don't trust you. We can have I don't mind high floor, low ceiling quarterbacks in the NFL because at the very least I know you won't screw up a game. Jared Goff has shown the floor before. I understand we're all kind of expecting him to pick up where he left off back in January, and I know he's looked good and comfortable in the season, but that's the comfort is the point where I start to get worried because if everything has to be very comfortable for him, what's going to happen when a defense makes him uncomfortable in game? If they get past, this offensive line at any point, they could screw up for the entire game. Or B, if injuries start to pile up on that offensive line, like or he loses some top receivers, or he loses Swift. Like, I don't like the chances with Jared Goff, and it doesn't spell well for the organization. I feel like to have a continued confidence in Jared Goff. I really think this year has to be very transactional. That he has to play out of his mind this year to have any kind of future consideration for Jared Goff. But at the same time, I think Ryan said it before, like the Lions have almost got pushed into a corner where if Goff doesn't work out for you, you kind of have to take a quarterback this year. And you're just sitting here hoping that maybe you're around and you can get the truth in Anthony Richardson or something. But Jared Goff himself is a big reason for me to be very pessimistic. I look at this offense, I see a lot of talent, a lot of young talent, and I see Jared Goff. And I'm not going to get into our card talk because I don't know what the thing is, but the steering wheel is bad.
I like how you dropped in Anthony Richardson. This is
going
to become
you know how Ryan felt about Malik Willis felt last year. I'm feeling that way right now about Anthony Richardson out of Florida.
But yeah, you dropped the seed, and now it will continue to grow as the season goes on. But I think Jared Goff is definitely a reason to at least question the ceiling of this team this year. Because while everything has been great in training camp, there's also been one factor that he hasn't had to deal with at all yet. Pressure.
Getting hit.
The live bullets aren't out there in practice, and he was only out there for one drive in the preseason, and he was kept pretty darn clean. And if there's one thing we know about Jared Goff, it's that once the pressure comes, like you said, he's a mistake-prone kind of guy who can make errors. He can fumble the ball. He can throw it into coverage. He can't seem to escape pressure particularly well, and so I know we all love this offensive line, but like Chris said, Jared Goff is not going to be in this comfy cocoon the entire season. Pressure is eventually going to come. Receivers are maybe get injured. Like you said, it's not going to be a perfect situation for all 17 games. So can Jared Goff be a more consistent guy that avoids the mistakes? I mean, that's what this team is going to need the most, because we have all these questions about the defense. The offense is going to have to carry the team, and the quickest way to not carry a team is to turn the ball over. And Jared Goff has had a turnover problem for the past 2-3 years. And so hopefully once the live bullets are coming and the pressure is coming every now and then, he can step up to the occasion. But it remains maybe the biggest unanswered question with him right now.
I want to take this a bridge further. And I think the reason that I've come up with for pessimism on the offensive side of the ball is Ben Johnson. And here's why. We all fell in love with Jim Bob Cooter before. we all fell in love with the position coach who was, the secret sauce behind the offense, and then he was given the keys to the kingdom. You know what I mean? Like, it's unfair to say that Ben Johnson is Jim Bob Cooter, but the situations are eerily reminiscent of one another. Ben Johnson has been this, guy behind the scenes, drawing up plays. He's the reason why the Lions offense shifted into second gear after the bye week. Now, there's always just this trepidation that comes with first-time coordinator, first time calling plays. Like it, that's a lot of responsibility for a guy.
Yeah.
And it's an awful lot of trust. So two things I'm trusting. First time offensive coordinator calling plays in Ben Johnson, Jared Goff having everything perfect around him at all times. What if things start being not perfect for Ben Johnson? Like, yeah, sure, the Lions have depth along the interior of their offensive line, but could they stand to lose either Taylor Decker or Penei Sewell for any significant stretch of time? And all of a sudden that becomes Matt Nelson. Ben Johnson, what are you going to do? You know what I mean? Because I
Sure.
think to your point, Jeremy, like you brought up a great point that I think a lot of people forgot that Taylor Decker didn't play the first half of the season and then came back. And then all of a sudden the Lions offense looked a lot better. It was probably because a lot of people were in comments saying silly, dumb stuff like, oh, the Lions should trade Taylor Decker. And those were the same guys who are like, well, why does their offense suck? And then Taylor Decker comes back and it's like, oh, it looks so good. Goff. It's like, dude, the Lions, they're on this tightrope and on offense. And I think it's to Chris's point, and I think it's to your point, Jeremy. It's the tightrope that they're walking with Jared Goff. But at the same time, the guy who's radio in at the bottom,
I can't.
He hasn't done it before.
Here's the thing: I can't get that end of half draw play in the red zone play in the preseason where he almost ran out the clock. It's one of those things that just like sits in the back of your head, or is just like.
It feels like it shouldn't matter, though, right?
It shouldn't matter. It shouldn't at all. But it's just one of it's one of those tiny red flags that I'm never gonna forget. And if anything like it ever happens, it's gonna be like, see, we knew it from the beginning. He was a fraud. No, but no. I also think like this city has a reputation of falling in love with offensive coordinators before quickly falling out of love with them. Like Scott Linehan was the exact same way.
Scott Linehan. And hey, I mean, other coordinators too. I know he's not offense, but Terrell Austin too.
Terrell Austin's good though. I remain that Terrell Austin is good, and some people still think he's in Detroit when they're talking about the Lions on a national stage. But we won't point fingers. Anyways, anyone else got another reason for pessimism? I'm sure there's more out there.
I mean, could I just say Joe Lombardi too? But. Okay,
sure.
I just wanted to add to the offensive coordinator guru that everybody
worse and worse.
His honeymoon was probably the shortest of them all.
Woo!
About 7 games.
Maybe.
I still remember Ryan and Alex in 2015 writing the column, "I apologize to Scott Linehan."
Right? That was a whole bell curve, right? Like an inverted bell curve. Everyone was really optimistic about him, then not so much, and then like after he left and was kind of okay with the Cowboys, like, oh shoot. It was partially because he was good with the Cowboys, partially because was it Linehan next or Lombardi next?
Man.
And I think so. Yeah,
it was Lombardi,
and everyone was like,
awful.
Linehan was actually good.
Yeah.
Do we want to talk about the linebackers, or are the linebackers in kind of this purgatory where it's just like part of us wants to be really optimistic about him, part of us is also like we should know better.
But we also really want to be really optimistic about a rookie,
right? And
I think Kelvin Shepard. I think Kelvin Shepard's words hold a lot of weight in that. Like, I haven't seen anyone do anything like this in like, what was it, 5 years, and he's a rookie. I think that's less. Again, that didn't sound a lot like praise to Rodrigo to me as much as it did like, oh damn, the linebackers are bad.
And have been bad for quite some time.
Since DeAndre Levy before he took his trip down to Chile.
But that's kind of like the whole push and pull of like the summer of Rodriguez, right? Is like, is he actually earning all of this praise, or is everyone else just not stepping up? And I think for the most part, I think we need to give Rodriguez credit, but it also bears wondering, like, okay, but how, like, we're still facing Alex Anzalone starting, right? Like that still exists. He's going to start and play. I would imagine like 100% of the snaps for at least the first half of the season. Maybe eventually it becomes Barnes and Rodriguez, but they're relying on Alex Anzalone to improve a lot, and I'm not buying that yet.
Yeah, I part of this I think does have to do with your expectations for the group too. You know what I mean? Like, sure. I feel like if your expectations are in line for all the reasons that you just said, like it's a rookie, it's a second-year guy that you're counting on, it's a guy who's often injured in Alex Anzalone. Like, I mean, you're just hoping that some of the guys like can fill in and not be absolute sieves. You know, you're hoping that Chris Board can step in a pinch. You're hoping that, you know, that you get some play from the young guys, but I guess that's kind of the double-edged sword of what you said for the reasons for optimism is also kind of the reason for pessimism is the Lions are still such an incredibly young team.
Yeah.
They are such an incredibly young team that, while that provides reason for optimism because they are young and this is a rebuild and it's all that stuff, like this is where the rebuild becomes very real. Like year 2 is the training wheels are off and expectations are just increased across the board. So I think that having such a young team, you really hope. I mean, it's the coaching staff, right? The coaching staff has to be on it when it comes to the linebackers, when it comes to the secondary that's so young. Like, yeah, I think I have one more reason for pessimism.
Hit it.
And it's on defense, and it's specifically injuries. Like, I'm worried about how the injury bug could absolutely prevent any progress from happening like it did a year ago.
Yeah.
Losing Romeo Okwara last season, losing Jeff Okudah so early in the season, those were two of the Lions' top defensive players, probably 1 and 2, and they were just gone. Season's lost. And Jeff Okudah is coming back from an Achilles injury. Like, this is normally a death sentence for players. And Romeo Okwara has an Achilles injury, and we haven't heard much from him. Josh Pascal is rehabbing from this surgery that he's had. Levi has this back problem that's lingering. There are a lot of young players that the Lions are really counting on to play really well that have injury concerns.
Yeah.
And that Alex Anzalone, whether you care for the guy or you don't, he's the starting linebacker of this team. Deshaun Elliott, like you mentioned, Jeremy, that's another starter, a guy who has a history of injuries, being prone to injuries. And you guys both know my favorite saying: the greatest ability is availability.
Availability, yes.
Yeah. But to build on that, because we said it last year too, one of the biggest goals for this team has to be development of their young players. Like, this isn't a team that's going to win playoff games this year. I'm sorry, all the Kool-Aid drinkers from the first segment, they're not going to win a playoff game this year. They're just not. Spoiler alert, that's not going to be part of my predictions in the next segment. So the big goal should be making sure your young players get some playing time, they get their feet wet, and they improve. And yeah, last year we were robbed of that from a lot of players, and we're just lined up to do that again. And I know Jameson Williams, that was all part of the plan. There's no setback there, but you have to be extremely disappointed that Levi's going to start not playing in week 1. You have to be disappointed that Ifeatu Melifonwu, to throw on top of that list, is not. Josh Pascal, all these guys aren't getting the develop they need. They didn't get the offseason that they need. That's not good. These rookie contracts don't last as long as you think. And so if Levi hits his stride in year 4, well, great. We get him for 1 year, and then what? And so, yeah, all that. So that's a really good point. The fact that so many guys are already injured is rough. And the fact that there's some of the younger, more important players doesn't help either.
Just it gets worse into the season, man. It's always a triage. It's always a triage.
As Dan Campbell said, that the best you're going to feel is day 1 of training camp.
Let's take another break here when we come back on the Pride of Detroit POD, because I think we're done with the pessimism, right?
Defensive tackle, run game. I don't know. The one thing I wanted to throw out there
actually,
is
you know
the
what?
run
I
defense.
could probably talk. Yes, yeah. Let's talk run game, because if DeAndre Swift doesn't put it together, oh god.
Well, no, I was saying run defense, but just like I so badly want to believe that these last 2 preseason games were like, okay, they figured it out on run defense, but part of me think like I feel like I know better. I know Michael Brockers is past his prime. I know that the depth on the defensive interior is bare at this point, as much as we want to love Demetrius Taylor or Isaiah Buggs or the new nose tackle. Like, it's bare there. And we're going to find out really soon when the Eagles come to town whether this run defense can hold up, but I am concerned about it.
They are run heavy. That is what they do. Let's take a quick break.
Atlanta game.
Stuck
into my game.
Oh,
back in my head.
Yeah.
They ran the hell all over us. I don't know. We'll see.